Good evening, everybody. Welcome back for another edition of Reasonable Doubt, brought to you by the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. I'm your host, Jimmy Ardwan, with my co-pilot, Julio J.V. Vela. What's going on, my friend?
Just learning to fly, slowly but surely.
The way you got your hair done, it looks like you've been in the breeze, man.
Well, with the guests that we have today, I had to get the hair right.
Yeah, you got it right. You got it nice, man. It's got some styling.
It's a blowout. Just blowout.
Is that
Full on fluff.
Yeah.
Looks nice.
We have a great show for you tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us, we are so proud to have these two ladies here tonight. The judges of the 339th and the 178th District Courts here in Harris County, Maria T. Jackson and Kelly Johnson.
Howdy, good evening,
Hi.
everyone.
Thank you both for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
It's really great to have you guys on. We're breaking through on this show. We're getting judges on left and right, and they're not just when they're running for as candidates. This is good. We're making progress.
Well, Harris County it's a big deal. It's in the news. Huge mass population. Big changes in wins and turnouts and voting. Big changes in policy. Big national things happening here.
Well, and I think a lot of people have now realized we're not here to punch people. We're here to have a conversation and have some fun. That's why we have tonight. And if you guys want to get in on the conversation, you can hit us up on Twitter at HCCLA_TV or call in 713-807-1794. So we were talking before the show, before we went live. You are, as Judge Johnson referenced, you're the throne holder right now. You've won the Game of Thrones. In terms of surviving. You came on
Mother of Dragons.
Right
here.
Yeah. You came on in 2008.
I did.
In the first Democratic sweep, if you will, of Harris County. It wasn't a complete sweep because I think
It wasn't a complete sweep. Only 8 of us won
Yeah,
in 2008.
but that was a big deal.
It was. It was out of 22 felony courts.
Yeah.
And then in 2012, it was 3 of us standing.
Wow.
In 2016, how many? That's when Judge Johnson came in.
I think there were maybe 8 of us. I think that they came in.
9.
No, it could have been 9. It was basically half of the 22 courts. It's split up every 4 years. But it's definitely changed over the years. And 2016 when I ran, it was very exciting because it was really the first time that all the courts on the criminal side that were running went Democrat.
Yeah.
Back in 2008, I couldn't imagine the pressure it was, and in a county that had been for the last 20 years a certain way, and you're coming in and you're running in a new color and a new time.
But not only that, but you replaced a very popular judge too.
Yes.
Who was very well liked by both Republicans and Democrats in the courthouse.
Yes.
And I mean, that had to be kind of a little bit of a...
It was very lonely, I will say. It was very lonely, and I could tell you stories.
Well, we got an hour. I mean, what was the impetus behind it? What was the driving force of you deciding to that early and taking a risk? Because it was a big risk. If it had gone maybe a different way, you might have made You might have had a lot of people not being very friendly to you. And so, what was it? And what was the impetus and driving force behind running, and what has been a secret of yours for keeping on?
Well, I treat everyone with respect, and I treat others as I like to be treated. I'm known as fair, I'm compassionate, and I can be tough when I need to be. And when I took the bench, of course, I was, what do you call it? I was the watched one.
Yeah.
And I was the unknown quantity when I won. And I really had to just prove myself, or people had to get to know me. And after my rulings and 10 years later, here I am.
Sure. What about you, Judge? What was the impetus behind your running, and what have you seen recently between when you ran and this election?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I was a prosecutor for a long time, and there were many forgotten people that I saw. And I think, I know that I worked with you two gentlemen for a long time, and I hope to think that I was known as a very progressive prosecutor. And so I just got to a point in my career, I thought, I'm doing what I believe is right. If I get fired, I'm still a lawyer. I can always go out and be on the other side. But I really thought that I had a lot to contribute if I ran as a judge. And it kind of gave me a different platform, a different seat in the courtroom, if you will, to really put forth a lot of the vision that I thought was being lost, I think, in the courtroom. The biggest thing that I saw sitting over there as a lawyer at the table was the defendant was forgotten. A lot of people would come in, they'd bring the defendant in, and no one would really notice him or her. Mental illness, addiction, veterans, a lot of those things that had really had no place in criminal law. I really felt like that we could give it a voice, we could give it a platform. And I don't know, I just really, Judge Jackson really blazed a trail for a lot of us. And when 2016 came around, I ran in 2014 for a misdemeanor bench. And honestly, I didn't feel like I was going to win, but I wanted to see how to do it, see what was out there, meet a lot of the groups, really kind of put my foot forward. And then in 2016, I thought, I think we can take it.
Yeah.
And I just really went for it and really enjoyed going to all the different areas of the county that I had not been to before. And I really actually very much enjoyed it.
What do you think? Have you? This is a loaded question as well.
Sure.
But
He loves to ask those.
I mean,
I know.
You gotta watch that.
just as Judge Jackson was for you, what are some things that you've done to mentor, or things that you've seen that are with this new batch of young, or it's a young judiciary, it's a younger maybe.
Well, they have no experience on the bench, so I mean.
Well, I mean,
a lot of-
fresh in that way. I mean, have you seen them? Have you formed relationships with this new group that's come in? Have you? And what's the dynamic in there? What's the pulse?
So the best thing I can tell you about this group is excitement. I was chair of the standing committee, which that sounds really boring, but it's basically chair over the probation department and the pretrial supervision. And I would go to the meetings, and you have leaders in all those groups. And honestly, it was kind of dull and and I respect all my past colleagues. I'm not saying anything bad about them at all. But the best thing about a lot of these behind the scenes things that I don't think we realized went on before we became judge, there's really a sense of excitement in all of it. And I think Judge Jackson and I, when we powwow and talk, we're just really excited that we have people that are visionaries, I think, like we're trying to be, and really can help put forth a lot of the reform that we've been wanting to do for a long time. And a lot of them we know, right, from being on the defense bar, that they've got a lot of experience. They are, like I say, excited. Some are young. Some, obviously, you don't have experience before you take the bench.
Yeah.
But I think that they really, really want to try hard at what they're doing, and they're excited about it. It's not just a place to just sit there and do nothing.
I'm curious from both of y'all because, when you go to law school, they teach you how to be an advocate.
Sure.
That's all we do. That's all. It's moot court. It's mock trial. It's advocate for a position. Make your best argument, right? I mean, that's essentially all you do from the time you enter law school till, I guess, for y'all, the time you take the bench. How hard has it been for you when you started out, and for you, to make that switch in the mind and say, okay, I can't advocate for a side here. I have to look at all the facts and really make a fair decision.
Jimmy, I'll tell you something funny. When I was 15, my parents used to come and get me to mediate their disputes, or you could call it their arguments. And whatever decision I made, they would go with it. And so I've been a judge since I was 15 years old.
That's what I was thinking. I think there are when a judge takes a stance on a bench and is there for time.
Yes.
It's a testament to that maybe they were just born to be a judge. Do you feel that? Did you feel that? I mean, you've said I don't think I could ever be a judge. I just don't know. It's so difficult. It's such a complex kind of heavy lies the crown kind of scenario. But I think that is a feeling that is true. Did you ever feel that? Did you feel that? And what do you think your legacy to the community, and what do you want it to be, and what do you feel like it's? You talked about reforms and programs and things that you wanted to implement. Have you seen some of those things, and what are they?
So I've been on the bench. I've been a judge for a total of 15 years. I was a full-time municipal court judge for 5 years, and now I've been on this felony court bench 10 years. And during my tenure on the bench, I have saved and rehabilitated thousands of lives. One of my greatest success stories, my famous success story, is a young man who was labeled as a habitual state jail offender. And this particular, he was a nonviolent offender, and this particular offense, the state wanted to send him to prison. And I looked at him and asked him, was he ready to change his life? And he was surprised because he had been in and out of jail. And 10 years later, he is now Mr. USA bodybuilding champion.
Wow.
And a successful businessman. And the other day I was in Macy's. Don't listen to that, honey.
right.
I was shopping.
They're still in business? They haven't been put out of business by Amazon?
I was shopping, and this cashier came over to me. She said, "You don't recognize me?" And I said, "No." She said, "You told me to do something positive with my life, and you gave me probation, and here I am working." And she hugged me.
That's amazing.
So
That's
I
amazing.
love what I do, and I'm really excited about our new judiciary. And it's as Judge Johnson said, it's not to take anything away from the past judges, but these new judges, they come to meetings. I'm the administrative judge over the felony courts, and they come to meetings, and they are all volunteering for committees. They're excited about reform.
What kind of committees are you talking about? You talk about committee.
Standing committee, the probation committee, the hearing officer committee.
Specialty and treatment courts.
Yes, specialty courts. We have new specialty court judges.
Docket
Judge
management
Johnson
committee.
is one of the Harris County Star Drug Court judges.
Talk to us about Star Court. Who does it help, and how does it help people?
So Star Court it's a statutory court created, and each county that's large enough is required to have one. In Harris County, we have 4, and it's specifically for addicts dealing with anything, with opioids, with methamphetamine, anything. But they are down on their luck. Doesn't have to be a drug charge. It can be anything where the root cause is by drugs. But it's a different kind of. You're in a different role as a judge. The ones that begin, you meet with them every week. You're much more connective with them. You're talking to them about their relationships and the things that intervene in their life that, again, are the root cause of their addiction. So it's an excellent program and something that has really been lost for many years.
So I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it was Dr. Phil was the guest.
Okay.
And it was interesting. He was talking about, how he would help people people would come to him because they're depressed and all this, and the answer in America now is put everybody on pills and medications.
Right.
I was going to say eat.
Well, and but he was talking about if you take that first dose and you're on it for 7 days, the odds of you ending up an addict to those opioids is like 1 in 12. If you take it for 30 days, the odds of you ending up as an addict are 1 in 3. And these are prescription drugs.
Yes.
And we don't realize, and I don't think the public realizes, and that's why having Star Court and being able to do this is such a great thing, because a person's body, they don't like they were saying on the show, it doesn't recognize whether you've gotten a prescription drug from a doctor or whether you've gotten heroin off the street.
Well, and prescription drugs, that's the most violated probation.
Yes.
It really is. And it is such a personal, intimate experience to be with with people that are facing these challenges on this journey with them. You are talking about everything from, their child being born positive with drugs and how they're facing all that and losing their kids. They've lost everything. And so you're just really letting them know that you're worth something, that you've got a life to contribute.
And I'm sure both of you have seen it. I mean, we're not talking about people just coming from the poorer areas of town now.
No.
I mean, this has become a problem in the more affluent areas of town where people have gotten hooked on the opioids and they can't, either the doctors won't prescribe them anymore or they can't afford the money for them, and so they turn to heroin or they turn to some street drug. But these are people from Katy, from Spring, from everywhere else, and I'm sure you guys have seen that.
And one of the things that I was a star drug court judge as well, and one of the things that I used to see are human trafficking victims, but they were arrested for drug use, theft. And when you get to the root cause, then you find out that they were abused when they were children and that they were being trafficked, and that's where they got hooked on drugs. And so they were charged with possession of a controlled substance, less than a gram, or theft.
Sure.
And that's really where we are going now, because there's always, most of the cases, the state jail felonies, there are root causes to this. And so the specialty courts really harness and look at and try to fix the root problem. I mean, it goes in depth with counseling and reporting what's
Recovery coaches and
Yes.
sponsors. I mean, it's a very involved process.
What would you say is what would you say is that these specialty courts and programs need to take to the next level, and what does that next level look like?
I mean, one of my goals is I want to see the felony courts have a sober court.
Interesting.
They have it a misdemeanor.
Sure.
And Harris County is the #1 intoxicated offense county in the country.
Right.
And by the time they get to our courts in felony, either they've not taken a probation and misdemeanor to address anything that they have, or when they get up to felony, they are just continuing the cycle and nothing has ever stopped it. And I just feel like that we have a responsibility to try to help them like we do with people that are on drugs. And they're very intertwined. It's usually rooted from some sort of mental illness with depression, bipolar, which we see interwoven in a lot of the crimes.
Yes.
So that's one of my goals.
What's the toughest thing about being a judge? What would you say? What's the toughest thing?
I'd say it's very humbling.
Yeah?
It's the only seat in the house where you're looking at them in the eyes.
Sure.
And, I sentenced someone today, and it was a case where someone would say, well, okay, it was, I won't talk about it specifically, but it was dealing with child pornography, okay? And a lot of people would say, oh, well, I know what I would do on that. That's easy. But when you're dealing with someone that has mental illness and a wonderful family who have tried everything, and there's other causes that may have intertwined with what brought them before you, it's very humbling. And so it's, I know my bailiff was like, he came up afterward when I sentenced someone, and he said, are you okay? And I just said, it's different when you feel the burden and the mountain of knowing that you're the place that's going to decide that person's future. And I think it's humbling, it's rewarding, but it's also very hard.
What would you say?
One case specifically sticks in my mind. It was a 19-year-old that he was a sophomore at the University of Houston, and he was a co-defendant with his co-defendant, and they were going to rob this cab driver, and his friend shot and killed the man in cold blood. So both of them, of course, the law of parties,
Right.
they were both charged with capital murder because he was the one that initiated the call to call the taxi cab driver and got in the car. He was participating with the offense. And just to see this man lose his life. I mean, he was found guilty, capital murder without the possibility of parole. And when I sentenced him, I was kind of shaking. And that was in 2010. And that's one of the cases that kind of just, it broke my heart.
Yeah.
He had a lot of promise.
Sure.
But then it goes back to us having the responsibility to teach our young people,
Yeah.
you have to be careful with the company that you keep.
I just can't even imagine what it's like, because I know how hard it is as a defense lawyer sometimes when you have a client who, and it's a bad case and they get a massive sentence and you're just like, oh, gosh, I wish there was something more I could have done. I mean, we kind of, unfortunately, all four of us at this table and everybody at the courthouse, we deal in tragedy and misfortune on a
Right.
daily basis. And it's hard. It's hard enough on us as defense lawyers, but we have to kind of, you got to set it aside and move on to the next case, kind of like,
Yes.
say with prosecutors. But like you were saying, you're the last stop. How hard is it for y'all, especially when you see cases like that? I mean, that's just got to
Well, and I'm
be
going
an
to
emotional
I'm going
weight
to
on
kind
y'all.
of, it is, and I'm going to kind of
Yes.
second what Judge Jackson said. I would say probably the hardest type of cases for me, and it sounds like with her as well, are the young people.
Yes.
Oh, so hard. And I just, I don't care what it is. I feel like, again, we're the last stop, and they got their whole life to live. And if it's short of life without parole, what can we do to give them the sense of acknowledgement with herself to accept their consequences and decide a different path? And so it's between the 17, which I still can't believe that's considered an adult.
Yeah.
So we've got 17 to say 26. That's such a crucial age that I think is really lost in felony especially. So we try to, really help that age.
Let me ask you something on a personal level. That's a heavy decision, okay, where you have to draw from somewhere. Where is it personally that that one finds peace and being and able to go to that place? Is it exercise? Is it church? Is it family? Is it work? Where you draw your strength to be able to deal with those kind of decisions?
Mine are several things. My faith in God. I'm a praying woman. My family, my husband, my kids. And the funny thing is, I enjoy watching scary movies.
Me too.
So my husband, he'll come home. He hates scary movies, and he'll see
I
me.
do too, by the way. I love them.
He'll see me watching a scary movie, and he's like, "How do you deal with all that gruesome tragedy all day, and you come home and watch a scary movie?" I'm like, "Be quiet. This is how I relax." But I don't. Now I don't like the slasher movies anymore.
No?
No, I like the ghost stories.
What's the latest one you've seen? I recently.
Okay, so I did watch Halloween, the last one.
Woohoo! Good. Huge Michael Myers fan, original. Did you know Johnny Depp's in the original Shredder, not Freddy Krueger movie?
Really?
Johnny Depp, little skinny little guy.
that.
Yeah.
Is that like his precursor to Edward Scissorhands?
Yeah.
Probably
right.
watched it like this at a slumber party.
No.
I'm a huge sci-fi horror fan.
Me too.
Sci-fi horror. Event Horizon's a real good one.
Yes.
I like the good old.
Stinks. See, I did not know this about you.
Yeah, big horror guy, big horror guy. What about you, Judge?
I mean, I can't follow up on that.
Where do you go for strength? And I mean,
I would probably say faith and family. I get into my series. I talk to my court reporter a lot about, okay, give me something good to watch, to kind of take us away from everything. But I think
Are you a Netflix binger?
oh yeah, like I'm catching up on Game of Thrones right now.
Yeah.
And so everything I talk about now is my lord and my lady.
Yes.
Your grace.
Wonderful.
It's such a bitter,
And and with
bittersweet coming up on the last season.
yes,
Yeah.
and then I've been, Game of Thrones in it with my black hood, with the rain. But I think we've gotten so good at compartmentalizing.
Yes.
I think we all have.
Yes.
I used to run. I'm trying to get, you sit a lot in this job. I don't think I
Yeah.
realized.
Sure.
They need to get sit-stand desks for the bench.
I'm working on it.
Yes, those very desks.
Yes.
Is that what it's
Just
called?
going to
Very
look really
desks?
awkward. Okay, but I'm working on it. But I think that is, I love being a kid with my kid.
Me too.
That's the best thing is I'm just really a kid at heart, and on the weekends I try to get away from all of it.
Yes.
And try to do things that inspire me.
That's I think that's. I take and I listen. I'm gonna take that and do
Yeah.
a little bit more things that
for each of
inspire
you, I
me.
mean, what's your unique hobby or quirk that everybody needs to know about? I mean, some people they barbecue, some people they go race cars, some people go skydiving. some people, you know, you can't really figure out what they do because they do all sorts of stuff and it's all crazy. But like, what's your? I mean, besides the horror movies, I mean, is there something else that we need to know about both of y'all?
Well, I used to play racquetball.
Really?
Oh,
Yes, I have not played in a while, and I'm very competitive. So when Judge Johnson talks about being a kid at heart, I have a 12-year-old.
Wonderful.
And so he's very competitive. He plays basketball, so, you know, I'm always racing. I lose all the time, but the silly things.
Sure.
What else?
What about you, Judge?
So I grew up playing tennis, but I'm also, I'm also born hick. I mean, I grew up in a small town, so riding horses, getting out on the four-wheeler, mule, that's country mule, meaning a power-driven four-wheel. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Like a raptor?
Yes.
And this is really when
fell
my
off of one
accent
when I
comes
was
out
5.
too.
Oh.
You what?
I fell off of one when I was 5.
Oh, yeah, that's-
But I still get on them.
Yeah.
It was my dad was more freaked out about the possible punishment he would incur from my mother than anything. I wasn't hurt that bad. Lost all the skin. But
Oh yeah, we've had many stories where the four-wheeler has gone into a pond or the friend's fallen off and broken his arm.
With
Yes.
you in it? Have you fallen in the pond?
Now I've not fallen in a pond, but I've had a babysitter fall off on a different one. I've had my cousin fall off my horse and break his arm, but I have survived.
Easy.
So I think it's because I'm used to it and I drag them on there with me. I think that's what happens. But I try to make a country boy out of my city boy son. But I just as far as like unique things, again, it's that trying to get away from everything. It's I like to camp.
Let's
I'm gonna try to challenge her in racquetball. I'm not gonna use my wrist.
Do it.
I know.
I play tennis.
you
I'm
need to
big
get, like, the
tennis.
full-
Okay,
Big
all right,
tennis.
we got
I'm big
this. 'cause
tennis,
I need to
yes.
get into it.
Do you go in the full 80s racquetball style outfit, all white with the headband?
With the headband. I used to like to play racquetball and be cute. And my mother used to say, "You better wear those glasses." And I hated them
yeah.
because, it takes away from the look. And one day I got real cocky. I was playing this police officer, and I just thought, you can't return my serve. And then I had the nerve to turn around.
got whacked.
He hit me
Oh,
right in my
no.
eye. So I was blind for about a month.
Oh wow.
And so afterwards, I started wearing those goofy glasses,
Did you bejangle them? I can see you
bedazzle them.
Bedazzle. Yes.
Let's talk about the courthouse.
Okay.
Okay, CJC, are we moving in? Are we not moving back in? I heard some people are moving in, some people aren't. Any words?
Okay, so
That's a loaded question
it,
again.
it really is. So we've been displaced almost 2 years. And how many of you had to come into the jail when we had to hold court in the jail?
I thankfully did not have to do that.
See, you escaped that. You should have
did.
experienced that.
I know.
So we were in the basement of the jail, and it would be 10 uncuffed defendants with 2 unarmed deputies. And we all felt it was unsafe, and we complained about it, but no one listened, and it took an inmate to punch one of the...
Current presiding judge.
Yes, that's a presiding judge now, in the face.
Yeah.
And so they figured it out. They said, oh, we better figure out another solution. So now we're in the CJC building once a week, and every other week we're in the civil courthouse. I actually formed a coalition that, to me, is the stakeholders. We are the stakeholders. Judge Johnson's on the committee. We have Chris Tridico, Rusty Hardin.
I think I'm actually on the committee.
Yes, please. Yes. And so.
Judge Sandil added me.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Judge Sandil. So we have several criminal court district judges, civil district court judges, and civil attorneys, and criminal defense attorneys, as well as president of the Harris County Deputies Organization. So it's comprised of stakeholders in the community. And so we're trying to let the Commissioners Court know that we really need a new courthouse. This is the third flood, so it's going to happen again. The lobby is not large enough. It was built faulty in the beginning, and the civil court learned from the first hurricane that the criminal courthouse was affected by, and it took them, they built the courthouse about 8 years later, the civil courthouse, and they did everything that the criminal courthouse did not do.
Right.
And so with that, in 1984, we also need more courts. In 1984, that was the last time a court was created, the 351st. And
Really?
yes.
Yes.
And it was Jack Ogg that created that
Wow.
court.
I didn't realize that was the last time
Yes.
a felony district court had been created in
Yeah,
Harris.
351st.
Yes. And
Oh.
and now, and it was about 888 cases that were filed per year.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
year.
yes, per year.
But for court.
No, per year. Per year. Okay. So now, fast forward to 2019, Harris County's population has doubled, and it was 2 million something in 1984. Now it's over 4 million here in Harris
Yeah.
County. And so now it's 1,500 cases filed per court now.
Per court.
Per court. So it's very hard. We could dispose 30 cases in a day, and then we could get 30 new cases the next day.
I've often wondered, why aren't there, and is there a legal boundary or hurdle? Why don't we see associate judges like we see in Fort Bend?
Oh my gosh,
or
we
in
we
other
need that
types
as
of-
well.
Is that something that could happen in Harris County?
If
I'll be calling you to help advocate with
yes,
us.
yes, we yes. Hey, we'll put you on that committee. That's a
Yes.
new committee.
Is that something that could happen? I mean,
We would love for that to happen. And
Are-
so that's why a lot of the impact courts were created, because that's as close as we can get right now to an associate judge. All the other courts have associate judges. And we especially need help.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Hurricane Harvey was devastating for the
Yes.
criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And you compound that with the fact that we don't have enough courts. And so when we all talk about criminal justice reform, because I know it's a large conversation right now, one of the basic concerns is we don't have enough courtrooms, we don't have enough judges. We have a high number of pretrial detainees. We're not able to get trials quickly. In the 178, we go to trial all the time. But it saddens me every single week when I see 10 to 15 cases on the trial docket.
Right.
You can only try one case.
Right.
And we only have 22 courts, with each court having at least 1,200 cases on the docket. I mean, it's really devastating. And I don't know what we have to do to get the attention. I know when I first started, and I really honestly didn't know that I was really doing this, but one of our wonderful legislators, Gene Wu, he put me an author on a bill, and we were talking about it. Next thing I know, I had a bill to create another district court. And this was literally my first month on the bench. I don't know if you remember this, Judge Jackson. And the presiding judge at the time came and said, whoa, 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 whoa. There's a lot that goes into creating that, because you can pass it with the state legislature, but you still need commissioner court approval.
Right.
And they're the ones that put up the money, all the money, $2 million per court, to run a district court. So there's a lot of players involved, but in the end, we have to figure out what our priorities are.
Right.
And when you're talking about bonds and you're talking about reform, you've got to have the courtrooms to give people their day in court, and we don't have that.
Yes.
So,
so what happened to that bill? And are there talks about that bill staying alive and on the back end funding for those?
no, the bill died in committee a couple of years ago, because if you don't have local support, and it's one of those, okay, we're going to try to rally support and go a different way. But that's one of the main problems, is you've got to get everybody on board. And depending what anyone's current agenda is,
Right.
if you don't get their attention, it's not going to get pushed forward.
Judge Johnson, we're going to revise that bill.
Good. I hope so.
And of course now we have the bail lawsuit on the felony side, that they've now filed the same lawsuit on the felony side that they did on the misdemeanor side. Do you guys think that could reignite the conversation at least? Because it seems like, in addition to all of the issues in the lawsuit about, how we should determine bond and that sort of thing, and trying to get people out on pretrial release as often as possible, it seems like a lot. Yes, I think we all agree on that. We saw what happened with the misdemeanor lawsuit, but you pinpoint a lot of fundamental problems that, okay, great, even if we resolve this lawsuit and we all agree and we settle it and we say, yeah, we want to do all that, we want to get it done, we physically can't do a lot of it.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. And nobody's thinking about any of that. They're wanting to put the cart before the horse. And actually, we are working with the plaintiff's attorneys. We're very happy what happened in with the misdemeanor courts. That should have never happened. Pretrial bonds for misdemeanors all day long.
Yeah.
We're in favor of that. As felony courts, one of our biggest concerns is safety of the victim and safety for the community. And so it cannot be one size fits all. We cannot be like the misdemeanor courts and just let everybody go. So we're actually working with the misdemeanor courts. They would love for us to be, and I would love for us to be able to be like the federal system, where we have a hearing and determine if someone is a danger to the community and not have to give them a bond.
And
There
guess
was
who could do those hearings? Associate judges.
Well, there was recently.
I mean, that's essentially what the magistrate judge in federal court does.
Yes.
I mean, they will conduct initial appearances, conduct detention hearings. If authorized by the district courts, they'll take pleas and then write a report and recommendation as to why the district court should accept the plea, and then the district court will do the sentencing. So there's no reason why you couldn't model that same system.
Well, I mean, the state constitution would need to be amended.
Yeah.
How was that and why?
Well, because right now the state constitution requires us to give a money bond, set money bond.
Understood. Got it.
Yes. So we need the legislators to help us. We need everybody to help us follow the law as well. So nobody was taking any of this into consideration right now.
Was the lawsuit on the federal lawsuit from the felony side, was that a surprise, or was that something that
Well, we're actually not named as a party.
Right.
The sheriff's department and who else is
Just
named?
the Harris
District
County.
court, right?
Yes.
It's just Harris County.
Yes, it's Harris County, but they haven't named us because they realize that we're in a unique position and that we do deal with serious felony
Sure.
cases. And so they're working with us very well. And
Well, and I think they were surprised when we did meet with the plaintiff attorneys and Judge Jackson initiated that in 2017, my class's first year, we sat down and we did carve-outs
yes,
on the felony side of what are considered, in our opinion, nonviolent crimes. And from January of 2015, just to give you an idea, from January 2015 until this year, personal bonds and on the felony side have gone up 444%. And those are dealt with on the low to moderate risk individuals. And we've got two main things with bonds. We want you to appear. You've got appearance and safety to the community.
yes.
And as Judge Jackson just pointed out, our state constitution requires a bail system. And a lot of I don't want to say rhetoric, but a lot of the conversation talks about, well, everyone needs a pretrial bond, or if there's such a danger, just keep them at no bond. Well, we can't do that.
Right.
There's only 4 instances in the Texas Constitution that allow a felony judge to keep someone at no bond, but only for a limited period of time. Even with capital murderers,
Yes.
alleged capital murder offenses, we can't keep them at no bond either. And a lot of people are surprised by that. But you have to look at, okay, what is this person's likelihood of they're presumed innocent, but are there priors one after another? Okay, and so what is their risk? We run a risk assessment, which is also new since the filing of the lawsuit in misdemeanor that I think a lot of people don't know about.
Is it the same risk assessment that misdemeanor uses, or is it different, and how is it?
It's the same.
Yes.
So it takes out, it's definitely focuses on equality and fairness. It takes out someone's ethnicity, their gender, anything of that sort. It focuses more on what are they charged with? Do they have any priors dealing with violence? Do they have any failure to appears in any court, whether it's misdemeanor or felony? So you're looking at broad-based risk assessments and determining, okay, what's the best for them? So, and I know Judge Jackson probably does the same thing. You have to look at each case individually and have a thoughtful based conversation with both sides to figure out what's the fairest way for that individual and for the community. And it's so much more difficult in felony.
Judge Johnson, what do you mean? You were my chief prosecutor. You know, I have both the state and the defense present when we're discussing bond, always.
Well, I said
Yes.
both sides. Yeah, you have both sides conversation. I thought I said that, but who knows? But yes, you have to have a conversation with both sides to figure out, does this person reside in Harris County? You know, do they have connections with another country? Meaning, are they, you know, is there a sense that they might flee? Those are all conversations that you have to have with both sides.
Yeah.
Just to get their presence in court.
You know, I wanted to get both of y'all's opinion on, we saw our elected DA a couple weeks ago request $20 million to add 102 new prosecutors. From y'all's perspective of what you're seeing, how the ADAs are managing things in court, and you know, I don't want you to advocate one way or another necessarily, but are there concerns that you have with the way things? Do you think things could be functioning better from the DA's side with the way the courts? I mean, I realize everybody's in a tough position, but are you concerned with how things are getting done on the state side?
I am, because I think that in order to have fair justice,
Yeah.
in order to have discovery, first of all, for a case to be properly analyzed and researched, and all the evidence to be given to the defense, both sides to have a fair chance at that case. Either way, you've got to have enough people on both sides being able to evaluate all these cases. We're talking about not enough courts. There's not enough prosecutors either. I mean, you know, day after day, cases are reset because either the prosecutors aren't ready, because they're inundated with too many cases per prosecutor.
Right.
And, you know, I think there's a conversation out there that says, oh, well, if we give them more prosecutors, they're going to arrest more people. No, you got to have two eyes looking at a case.
Yeah.
And if you don't have enough people to do it, then justice is not fair. You know, justice also means dismissing a case, but in order to get that justice, you have to have enough people to be able to evaluate those cases.
Yeah, to be able to
Yeah.
evaluate it correctly.
I have nothing to add to that. I'll say well said, and I agree.
You know, it's interesting because I don't think a lot of people realize until they look at the statistics. You know, because I was in court yesterday on a case, on a real basic case where we still are waiting almost 5 months later for surveillance video
Right.
from the mall. And it's because, you know, there's not somebody assigned to follow up with the officers, and people don't realize, like, hey, the officers are also overwhelmed as well.
Right.
Because
Everybody's overwhelmed
you know,
right now.
you go and talk to officers who are in the cyber crimes division or the financial fraud division, and just about the identity theft, the number of identity theft cases that they're working. I mean, they're getting 1,500 calls a month.
Yes.
You know, and they've got to open a case. They've got to do each one. And I mean, so you've got to have somebody within the DA's office tasked to, hey, say, all right, I know you're busy, but send me that video, or send me this report, because
Well, and I
gotta
can't tell
get it.
you how disheartening it is as a judge to see someone sitting in jail for over a year.
Right.
You finally get to trial, and the state dismisses it on trial day.
Yes.
I mean, I see that happen time and time again, and I just want to just hit myself upside the head. And I don't want to blame either side, but I know that if they had more people,
Yeah.
and they could give even the problem cases the time that it deserves,
Yeah.
then they could get the right result for fairness for both sides.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. From someone who's in the trenches, it's the same thing. I see it all the time. If somebody could just look at it, and you're in court and you're telling them, and I'm one that interacts with the assistant district attorneys outside of court as well, and I'm emailing, we contact, we sit, we socialize, and talk about things. And a lot of the times, all the time, I'm talking to them, and they just have so many cases, so many cases that the specific individualized attention doesn't happen until the eve of trial.
That's right.
And it shouldn't be that way when the individual is in custody or even has to come back to court and just come back to just to be dismissed on the day of trial because of that thing that you talked about 8 months ago.
Right.
Well, and as judges, we're really trying to have relevant conversations and relevant hearings each court setting. The conversations with the lawyers, we are pushing for that to happen outside of court.
Yes.
But you know as well as I do that getting a prosecutor one-on-one, getting them to focus on your case is very difficult these days. And so you've got to wait till that court setting where you can sit down and have a true conversation about the evidence that is in the case.
I have
Also, it's hard to get some of the defense attorneys to
Of
go over
course.
to the jail to go visit with their clients as well.
Just go talk.
It is.
I agree. Just go talk real quick. It's an hour. You know, I have found is that the courts that have the dockets that, for example, I'll go to a coordinator and I'll say, yeah, put it on that setting. Let's put some pressure. Come on. Like, you know, and I will enjoy getting to a setting where, okay, you know, there's no freebie on this next setting. Like, we're going to have to talk to somebody about this and, you know, let's go. And so I enjoy those courts where the docket is moving regardless of whether the attorneys want to or not.
Right.
Right? It's moving. And I enjoy
gotta
that.
do that.
And you got to do it because otherwise that attention won't happen. And believe me, I can make judges, I can make a case disappear over here all the time. But when you got that docket that says, you know, bring it back.
Right.
You know, here it is.
That's right.
And sometimes I do that for my advantage, and sometimes I'm looking forward to that setting. Sometimes I'm not, but it's those dockets that keep moving us along, I think, are important.
Yeah.
So
Let's we got a phone call coming in actually. So let's take our lives in our own hands and see what the world has to offer this evening. Hello, thanks for calling Reasonable Doubt.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. I have a couple questions for the judges. One of the questions I had was about resources. The judges just mentioned resources and how they can help move cases along, and I was wondering what their thoughts were about potentially having a statewide public defender system in Texas versus our current appointment system, or the wheel as it's sometimes called, and the resources for defense counsel. And then my other question was just to ask what they think the court's role is in our modern society. I've heard that historically courts have kind of maintained the status quo. It was courts that said women couldn't enter into contract, women couldn't own land, that enforced slavery, and how they view their roles as judges in sort of moving society along in the right direction and on the right side of history. And I'll take their answers off air. Thank
Great.
you.
Yep, thanks for the questions. Let's start with the public defender question. What do y'all think about trying to move to a statewide public defender system?
I have no opinion on that. I'm fine with it either way.
I would agree with that too. I think whatever can happen to have the best resources, and I think she really nailed it when she said the word resource.
Yes.
You know, you want to be able to have, if you're in trial, to have a group to call to help you with your research and to have enough support, forensics, everything that you need. I think whatever we can do to enhance the defense, that would be great.
speaking of resources, the voucher system's changing. There has to be a change in how we do things, or by March 8th, we have to create for the individual assignments for the day, we have to create a new, we have to create an archive of all the cases that are pending if we want to bill for that. God, you guys must be getting a ton of people asking to sign their vouchers.
Yes, we
Yes.
are.
I can only
Yes.
imagine.
Yes.
And to be clear, you don't have to submit the voucher. You just have to create the, what's it called? The
The interim?
interim or
Yes,
the
interim voucher.
yes, and you don't have to do much. And because from what I understand, I've never done it, and I don't think anyone should. You're not supposed to be interim billing. It's just me. I don't know. That's what they tell me to do. But right, so it's
Everything's different now.
don't submit the voucher. Just make the filing archive of it.
So how do you like the paperless system?
I love the paper. Okay, let's talk about paperless systems.
Then we got to get to our
ask
second
that-
question.
The second question.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's more of an
So-
ethereal question.
Yeah,
And,
go.
I mean,
So-
I think it's interesting because, you know, I'm kind of curious. Where do you to just kind of piggyback off the caller's question? But where do y'all view yours? Do you have some judges? I feel like you can see with them that they view it just as a job. They're there to collect a paycheck and it's a job. But then other judges, you really do feel like this person understands that there's a gravitas and a bigger sense of societal responsibility by being not just an elected official, but a judge on top of that. How does that?
Let
How
me
do y'all feel
just
about that?
share some of my background. In the late 80s and early 90s, I used to train and rehabilitate youth offenders and gang members. So I was in my 20s, and that's where I learned that some people actually can be rehabilitated if they're given the chance, the encouragement and the love. And I took those skills to the bench. And when I was elected in 2009, I was sworn in and took the bench. I was giving nonviolent offenders pretrial bonds already. I was doing that. And I was giving, without agreed recommendation, probations. So I was taking a chance, and those are the cases that I take personal as well.
Sure.
The state doesn't recommend probation for certain cases, burglary of a habitation, aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. So my role in life, my legacy is everywhere I go to leave it better than when I came. And I'll tell you, one of the hardest things that I had to do was I'd given a young man probation for burglary of a deferred, and this guy committed another burglary, and he was testing positive. He was doing everything the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And so I adjudicated his guilt, found him guilty, and sentenced him. I gave him 4 years. It was on the low end to me. And that day, my house was burglarized.
Oh no.
And, you know, if you've ever been burglarized, you feel violated.
Oh yeah.
They took everything. They even took my kids' expensive Wiis and all of that, but they took all of my jewelry, my grandmother's jewelry that was passed down to me. And so I was devastated. And I feel to this day that this young man made a call that said, okay, she sent me to prison. Let's go rob her. And about a month later, a defense attorney asked, Judge, would you give this person deferred? He's a young man. Now, the human part of me wanted to send all burglary of habitations to prison. But I set that aside, and I looked at his record, and I gave him a chance. But that was one of the hardest things that I've had to do, as a judge. You put a good judge to me. You put aside your personal beliefs, and you judge this case individually. And I looked at, this is a young man, he may be able to be rehabilitated. So I would say that for the most part, most of the probationers that I've taken a chance on have become productive members in the community. So that makes me happy. Is everybody going to succeed? No.
No,
So
they're not.
What are some of the biggest challenges you've had to face as a judge? And not only as maybe a personal story or a case, but also from what the caller was saying, is really being at the forefront of I call it a movement, and to see it from the stands, to see it from or the trenches, because I mean, I remember you as a prosecutor. I remember you becoming a judge. I remember me being in front of you as a new judge. I remember and presiding since then. Likewise, how is it to be at the front of like it's a real change? At least I think that we've been a part of and seen that maybe comes every 20 years or so. What challenges have you seen faced, and what are some to expect?
So I really view it as a true sense of responsibility, and I don't mean that to sound corny, but I really do feel like it's so humbling. You know, I've heard people say, "Oh, you don't have the black robe disease." I don't even know where that comes from, because when you sit up there and, like I say, you have the seat in the house where you're looking at them in the eye. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm the youngest and the only girl in my family, and I like to think I have a bleeding heart. And after all these years, 20 years in criminal law, I still have hope in people. And so I feel like that it's an awesome responsibility, and I have a lot of very talented lawyers in front of me on a daily basis. But I think I'm always trying to figure out, okay, what got this person here? And I feel that sense of responsibility. And I know a lot of times the easy way would just say, okay, just put this person in prison. You know, it's it's 2 to 10 years. Let's just give them 5 years and be done with it. And I try to have, again, a conversation with, prosecutors or defense lawyers, whoever it is, and say, you know what, if this person goes to prison, they're going to get out.
Yeah.
And then nothing has changed. The rest of us have to take care of those people for the rest of their lives. They can't vote. They can't get an apartment. They can't buy a car. They've lost their sense of self. And many times the defendants want to take the easy way out and get that time.
Sure.
And so I really felt like the biggest challenge is saying, I don't want to do that plea bargain. You know, I'm not going to take a felony conviction, time served on this person, because I think they don't see that they need to be rehabilitated, or at least given a chance.
Yeah.
Right. So
I look at that black robe disease thing, and I just say that that's the same. It's a person type, right?
Right.
I mean, it's the same type of person who, grew up poor, became a successful lawyer, and is now a jackass to everybody.
Yes.
Right, maybe.
Yes.
That now they're rich and they're going to treat everybody, like crap because they've got the power, they've got the money. It's just that's a person type, because you hear stories about people who become billionaires and they're like, yeah, that guy never changed.
Right.
But then you hear stories about others. It's like, yeah, well, he became a different person once he became this. It's just. I don't think you can just limit it to somebody who gets on the bench. I mean, I think you see it across all sorts of professions.
I agree with that.
And everything. I mean, it's just being a jerk, and if that's who you are, that's who you are, no matter what your profession is, and you're going to get them everywhere. I mean, unfortunately, we can't weed that out.
I will say, I'll give y'all a little bit of inside information.
No, you got to do it
quickly. And neither of y'all, both of y'all, Your Honors. Nobody ever says, I'm going to Judge Jackson's court or Judge Johnson's court and say, oh, God, that sucks. I'm serious.
Oh, great.
Both of y'all were awesome.
High five.
And we were
Thank
talking
you.
about, that's what we were talking about. I mean, y'all's reputation precedes y'all. Continue to please give back to the community. Thank you for being here.
And that's all the time we have
Thank
for
you
this
for having
week.
us.
I want to thank both of our guests, Judge Johnson and Judge Jackson. We will see you next week with another edition of Reasonable Doubt. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.